Hello everyone and welcome to the TradCast, the podcast that connects traditional archery enthusiasts. Today is episode number 18, and on today's show, we'll be discussing traditional turkey hunting tactics with Don Barnett. This is going to be an awesome show. Let's jump right into it. All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the TradCast, the podcast that connects traditional archery enthusiasts. And this show is for the last week of April 2015. And I've got another excellent show in store for you guys today. We're going to be starting things off with a couple of updates from upstate New York on some things that I've been doing. And then we're going to go over to a recent interview I had with accomplished turkey hunter Don Barnett, who's going to be giving us some tips and tactics for turkey hunting, and specifically turkey hunting with traditional equipment. I think everybody is really going to enjoy this interview. Don shared some excellent tips and some tactics that he uses to be very successful in the field at turkey hunting. But again, before we get into that interview, I do want to give you guys just a couple of brief updates. Okay, and the first update I wanted to give you guys is the fact that the last 2 weekends ago, a good friend of mine, Paul, came up, and he came up to spend the weekend up my way, and we did a bunch of shooting. And one thing that I learned during that weekend, and this was the first time that I had been able to get out and really do any shooting at all outside, because our snow had pretty much just melted just days before Paul came up. So this was pretty much my first time shooting my longbows outside. As people know who's been following the podcast, all winter, pretty much since last December, after deer season, I've been pretty much shooting indoors here in my basement here in northern New York, because we just get so much snow and such cold, brutal temperatures during the winter time. Just simply am not able to get out and really shoot outside, because I'm always dealing with temperatures way down below zero, or 2 to 4 feet of snow, and it's just never practical to get out and to shoot outdoors, at least not when I was first starting out, because I just didn't want to lose arrows and all that stuff. So I shot indoors all winter, was pretty much tied to a 9-yard range that I've got in my basement. That's as far as I could shoot all winter, and I was pretty much just working on my form pretty much all winter. But 2 weekends ago, when Paul came up, we were shooting, and all winter long I pretty much shot mostly cedar arrows, because I really wanted to shoot cedar arrows, and I really wanted to make those work, and they were shooting great at 10 yards. I was very, very happy and looking forward to shooting those arrows. And then Paul came up, and of course I was shooting my cedar arrows that I've been shooting all winter. And Paul he had some micro diameter blood sport arrows, carbon arrows. And one thing was very apparent just about 10 shots into shooting with Paul a few weeks back, and that was that carbon arrows are, without question, in my opinion, have a much flatter trajectory and just seem to be much smoother shooting than the cedars, at least with my setup and how I'm shooting. So I pretty much mid-weekend, me and Paul shot about 45 minutes away from my house on Saturday up at one of my properties. And so I pretty much only brought my cedar arrows with me. So that whole day Saturday, I shot my cedar arrows. But Sunday, we shot at my house, and I brought out my carbon arrows that I had shot way back in December. And no question, after shooting Saturday and Sunday, I've made the switch. I'm going to be shooting carbons simply because they fly much smoother at all distances. The issue I was having personally with the cedar arrows is they would fly, great inside of, say, 12 yards. 12 yards and in, they were great. But what happened was, as I, got out there pretty much 15 yards and beyond, I just noticed a significant decrease, a significant drop in that arrow, shooting it, out from, 15 to, say, 30 yards. And I could just see it being an issue for me. So I pretty much made the decision that, you know what, I need to shoot carbons. And Sunday in my shooting, I shot much better, out to even, 25, 30 yards. And I was much happier shooting the carbons. So I pretty much, Sunday night, ordered some new Tiger Shark, Simmons Tiger Shark broadheads for my carbon arrows. And I've been shooting the carbons ever since. And I've been shooting here the last couple of weeks at home after work and stuff. Going outside, shooting, 15, 20 arrows. And I'm very happy with how my bow is shooting with the carbon arrows. So for anybody who was interested in knowing, my setup, at least for turkey season, is going to be, I'm shooting the Beeman ICS Bowhunter carbon arrows, 400 spine arrow. Those arrows are cut to pretty much 27 inches, and I'm going to be shooting the 175 grain Simmons Tiger Shark broadheads. And I'm happy with how they're flying. I'm happy with how my arrows are shooting. And that's going to be my setup. And for myself, I just find the carbon arrows to shoot much better than cedars. So I just wanted to give everybody a quick update on that. Okay, and the second update I wanted to give everybody is the last couple of weeks I have completed all of my frost seeding on my food plots. Now, for anybody who's not aware, I do own a couple pieces of property here in northern New York. I've got one piece that's about 45 acres, and I got another piece of property about a half an hour away that from the other property, and that property is about 90 acres. And I've got various food plots on both properties. I think between both properties I'm pushing, I think I've got 10 or 11 food plots. And so, of course, those are a lot of work to maintain. And this year, in pretty much every food plot but probably one, I'm going to be putting clover. And the reason for that is very simple. Clover grows from pretty much right after snow melt right through until snow the next season. And it's a food plot that you can put in small food, that you can, it's a seed blend that you can put in small food plots. And it's always regenerating, and and the deer really are never able to completely wipe it out. And that's one issue that I have had with some of my previous years planting fall annuals or soybeans last year, is that because they don't regenerate, those fall annuals and soybeans, the deer, at least, on my properties, because I don't have access to put in, a 5-acre food plot, I'm dealing with mostly little, anywhere from a 1/12 of an acre to a 1/2 of an acre food plots. And the deer simply will wipe out the forage if it's not if it's not a perennial, something like clover that just keeps regrowing and regenerating. So I've pretty much made the switch to go to all clover in my food plots. This year I'm going with North Ridge Wildlife Forage's Mountain Monster Clover. And I just got all my food plots frost seeded, actually all except for one. I do have one of my small food plots. It's kind of in a little low spot in the woods, and that spot just really retains a lot of watershed in the spring. And I checked it this past weekend, and there's still, 8 inches of water in that food plot, the majority of it. So I'm probably going to be another week or two before I can go in there and frost seed clover onto that food plot. It was clover last year, and of course that's going to regenerate, but I do want to give it a frost seeding. So if anybody out there hasn't yet frost seeded their food plots, I would strongly recommend getting out there, getting those done as soon as you can. And I plan on following that frost seeding up with some lime and fertilizer in the next couple of weeks, probably after the second weekend of our turkey season. The second week of turkey season, I'm going to start, after that, I'm going to start doing some more work in the food plots. But the first few weeks of turkey season, I'm pretty much going to be focused strictly on turkey hunting. And that brings me into the last update I wanted to give you guys before we jump into this week's interview. I wanted to just give you a quick update that, well, I'm actually recording this segment here on April 28th. So we've only got 2 more days until turkey season opens here in New York. And for the opening weekend, I will be going down to my buddy Paul's area, down in the central part of the state, and we're going to be hunting a ton of state land on opening weekend. We're going to make a 3-day hunting adventure of it. We're pretty much going to be running and gunning, and just trying to locate and get on as many birds as we possibly can and see if we can make it happen with the decoys in the reaping fashion. I think mine and Paul's game plan for opening weekend is going to be, one of us is going to be carrying our traditional bow, and one of us is going to have a 12 gauge. And the way we're going to play it is, if we can get close enough for a traditional bow shot, whoever's got the traditional bow is going to go ahead and try to get it done. If we can't, if that bird hangs up for whatever reason and we simply can't get inside a bow range, the guy with the 12 gauge is going to go ahead and see if he can get it done. And we're just going to swap off over the course of the weekend and see what happens. So I'll be bringing you guys an update on the first weekend and the first 4 or 5 days of turkey season. I'll give you guys an update on that during the next podcast. And that's pretty much it for updates. One last little quick reminder, for anybody who wants to follow along with the podcast, there's currently 3 ways to do it. You can watch the YouTube feed. I put the podcast on YouTube each week, and I also put the podcast on a website called Podomatic.com. You can go over there, search the TradCast, and you should find us. And you can also listen on iTunes. So there's 3 ways that you can listen to the podcast. And all right, guys, that's all I've got for updates this week. Now let's jump right into the interview I recently had with Don Barnett, who gave us some tips and tactics for traditional turkey hunting. Okay, everyone, like I mentioned earlier, we've got another special guest on the line this evening. I'm interviewing Don Barnett, and Don is going to be giving us some tips and some tactics this evening for turkey hunting, and turkey hunting specifically with traditional equipment. Welcome to the show, Don.
Thank you. I'm glad to be on board.
Yeah, I'm glad to be doing the show with you tonight. Now, Don, for anybody who's not familiar with you, I was going to have you introduce yourself to the listeners. Tell us a little bit about how you got into hunting and how you've gotten into shooting traditional archery.
Sure. I'm from Little Rock, Arkansas. I live in Bryan, Arkansas now, but been here all my life except while I've been in college. But I took up hunting at a very early age because I grew up in a rural area of central Arkansas, and my days were spent chasing rabbits and birds and all that kind of stuff. And I can remember many years ago that my grandfather, when I was about 5 or 6, gave me some Ben Pearson fiberglass longbows, and they were just solid fiberglass. And I can remember hunting with those things for days and days during the summer. And then, when Boy Scouts came around, like a lot of us that were in Boy Scouts, we all shot the recurves and truly loved it. And then I can remember at 12 is when I started actually bow hunting officially for like deer and things. And at that time I went down to a local archery shop and got a Jennings compound. And back then, which was about 40 years ago, very few people, hunted with a bow at all. And I can remember going to public land to deer hunt, and you get all the little crazy looks and stuff. And we're even talking about a state, that Ben Pearson was in, and still there weren't very many people that hunted with a bow. But that's kind of how I got started. About 12, I started hunting deer, and it took me several years to get my first deer. But hunting has always been in my past, and has always been a joy for me. It's my favorite hobby.
Yeah, mine too. Now, Don, I wanted to have you also tell us a little bit about how long have you been shooting traditional bows?
I started shooting traditional in '88. Um, I did like a lot of people do is you shoot the compounds and you get real good at it and it becomes very simple. Uh, those long shots on deer are not that difficult, and so you look for something more challenging. And then I think it was either '87 or '88. I got a Fred Bear takedown recurve and started shooting it and loved it. And from there, it was probably a year later, I ordered a Tim Meggs longbow, a Duoflex, 66 inches long. And I called him and I said, I wanted it 73 pounds. And he laughed at me. He said, you don't want a bow that heavy. And I said, yes, sir, I do. And I said, I was shooting a 75-pound compound and all this stuff. So he made me one and he sent it, and he was correct. It was way too heavy, but I did shoot it for about 5 years. But it was a wonderful bow and shot, killed many deer with that bow. And from there, I just started, with local bowyers, and would have custom bows made, Arkansas sticks and Roy Hall. I currently shoot a Roy Hall. So that's kind of how I got started in traditional, and it was basically a progression from through the compound and on into the recurves and the longbows. And I really love the longbows because I just think they shoot better. The recurves are wonderful, but there's just something about a good longbow. It just has that certain feel, and those guys that shoot them know what I'm talking about.
Awesome. Yeah, I've got two longbows myself now, and I have a used recurve, and I've only been shooting for about 7 months now, but I will agree with you. I also, at this point, prefer shooting my longbows over the recurve, although they're both fun to shoot, no doubt.
Well, oh, they are.
Awesome. Now, Don, I know that you are a very accomplished and a very serious turkey hunter, and I know that you recently had some success in 2 different states, if I'm not mistaken. I wanted to have you also just give us a quick recap on those 2 recent hunts, where you were hunting, and kind of how those hunts played out.
Sure. This year is the first year I decided to hunt turkeys with my longbow. I've turkey hunted for many years, and I've taken hundreds and hundreds of turkeys. Back in, I guess it was '02, I decided I'd start trying to, take turkeys with a bow. And I didn't own a compound bow, so I went and got one because I knew that you have to be very precise when shooting a turkey. So I got a compound in '02 and I killed my first turkey then. And it has taken that long for me to get comfortable taking turkeys with a bow. I've taken about 50 now bows, period, to move up into the longbow where I feel comfortable that when I'm out there, I've got a really, really good chance of connecting and claiming what I shoot at. So this year, I went to Texas with my Roy Hall, and I hung out of a blind, and on opening day, I got my first Rio, and it was a good bird. It was about 21-pound bird with a nice 9.5-inch beard, I think, and maybe an inch and an eighth spurs. So it was a good bird, and I was excited. And then from there, I went and got my second bird opening day in Arkansas, and fly down was at about 6:20, and had 2 strut right on in, and at 6:40 I had him on the ground, and it was a very exciting day because he was also he was about a 3-year-old bird, but good spurs and a nice beard. So that's kind of how my season has started. I'm halfway through my slam. I've got the Eastern and got the Rio, and I've been to Florida this year and got my birds, but I did not take my longbow. I regret that. So I'm going to have to do that one next spring. But I do have trips planned to Nebraska and South Dakota to get my Merriam, and I'll be taking my longbow along with me.
Awesome. Well, I certainly want to congratulate you on those accomplishments,
Well, thank you.
and I'm certainly going to wish you the best of luck accomplishing that slam. And it sounds like you're off to an awesome start.
It's a good start, but hopefully I can keep the steam going.
Yeah. Well, good luck to you. And Don, I also wanted to have you explain for the listeners a little bit about your current traditional bow hunting setup. Everything from the bow that you shoot to the arrows you prefer, and to the broadheads that you like also.
Sure. I use the exact same thing that I hunt my deer and my bear with. Turkey hunting is my first love. Bear hunting is my second, and then top it off with deer is my number 3 passion. But I use the exact same thing for all three. And I shoot a Roy Hall takedown Apache, 60-inch, 51-pound. It's custom made. It's a beautiful bow, and it shoots really, really nicely. I use Alaska Grizzly Sticks arrows, and I shoot 125 grain stingers, and I shoot with a tab, and it's worked very well for me and for all three. I've taken plenty of deer and bear and turkeys with it, so it's a really good setup for me. The big issue with turkey hunting is with a bow. I've always bow hunted turkeys out of a blind, and they're starting to make some jumbo-sized blinds now, which are a little easier for long bows, 60 or 66-inch or whatever, 64-inch long bows where you can maneuver them around inside. But I use a double bull, and you really have to cant your bow to shoot it out the window. And that's another big thing, and it takes a lot of practice. You need to practice shooting from a chair and that sort of thing. But that's my setup. And then I tweak different things with the blinds and with the decoys in order to get good success. And I've learned through the years since '02 when I started turkey hunting with a bow, what little things are successful and what things aren't.
Very nice. Yeah, I mean, I've never shot one of my traditional bows yet out of a ground blind, but I can certainly see where that would be a little bit of an issue from an ergonomic standpoint.
Yeah, it is tough. Takes a little practice.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. Now, Don, I also wanted to have you touch on a little bit, if you could tell us a little bit about the various states that you've hunted turkeys in, and I also wanted to have you explain if you've noticed any behavioral differences, in turkeys from state to state, and how that affects your hunting or maybe your setup.
Sure, it really does. Every year I typically will hunt all the states that touch Arkansas. And so I'll hunt Arkansas, Mississippi, Tennessee, Kansas is really close, Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri. I'll also jump over to Kentucky. It's not very far. And I'll always go to Nebraska, usually go to Florida, Alabama, hunted Colorado, and South Dakota. And that's kind of the ones that I will try and hit on a yearly basis. So it's a lot of states, and I'm a veterinarian, so I'm really busy, and I don't have a lot of time off. And I do these trips, believe it or not, usually on weekends. And so I'll take just a little long weekend, and I'll take off and go hunting, and be back on Monday morning.
Very nice. Certainly can't discredit your passion for turkey hunting. Like I said, jumping around from state to state like that. I can sure that's very grueling, and obviously you've got a lot of passion for it.
Right. And there are some differences between these birds, and I will say that the easterns are the hardest to take. And over the years, I've taken about 400 gobblers, and I can tell you from experience that the easterns are the ones that really give you the fits, and it's mainly because of the heavy hunting pressure. I hunt on private land here in Arkansas, and even our birds that aren't, pushed as hard as some of the public land birds, they're still real cagey. They're really, really hard to hunt. The Florida birds are a little bit easier, I think. The Merriams are a little bit easier than the Florida, and then the Rios. They're a real good one to start off on if somebody's wanting to hunt a bird that's not quite as cagey as the Eastern, and they do gobble a lot, and they come to a call real easy. So that's a good one to start off for traditional wise, which is what I did. I started with the Texas and the Rios.
Very nice. Now, just to kind of get a little bit deeper into that, now, do you think that the reason why the Eastern turkeys are harder to hunt, do you think, and I know you touched on it, but do you think it's primarily due to hunting pressure, or do you think there's some other, other factors involved with that?
I honestly think it's hunting pressure. One other thing that probably makes a difference too is they're more accustomed to thick timber, and that always causes a problem, especially for a bow hunter. But the birds I hunt in the other states, I hunt mainly on private land. There's a few places I hunt public, but mainly on private land. And those places I hunt, the birds really aren't spooked, and they're just a little easier to hunt than they are. These birds in when I go to Alabama or Mississippi or Tennessee or Arkansas, these birds they're very, very tough to hunt, and those are the ones that I end up chasing several days before I get lucky. Whereas if you're hunting in some of these other states, it's not unusual for me to tag out pretty quickly.
Very nice. Yeah, and that's a pretty consistent theme that I've, kind of found, from talking to other guys, about turkey hunting. Seems to be, a lot of guys would agree with you that, the Eastern turkeys are harder to take, and I think, the majority of us would probably agree that it's that hunting pressure equation that's probably making that way, yeah.
They're all the same. I mean, they're all turkeys, and they have little quirks that they'll do a little bit different, and it seems like the Merriams will travel very, very long distances. It's not unusual to see them, moving 1-2 miles and nice long walk, which the Easterns aren't going to do. And they're very vocal. The Rios are similar to that too. They just like to gobble a lot. And our birds don't do that, but I really think it's just due to pressure. I think if you took a Rio and set him down in the middle of Mississippi with all those hunters, it wouldn't take long to he'd turn out just like his cousins and be very, very cagey and very, very quiet.
Yeah, right. I can definitely see where that would be the case. Now, Don, I wanted to have you also, if you could give us, a high-level perspective look at, in general, what your tactics are, for turkey hunting.
Right. When I'm trying to bow hunt them, the first thing I do is I usually have hunted the area before, so I already kind of know where the turkeys are going to be, and so that gives me a step up. And from there, I will take my blind before daylight, and I'll set it up where I think it needs to be, knowing that I might have to pull it and go somewhere else. I never have tried to shoot a turkey other than out of the blind with a bow. It's so much easier to hunt out of a blind because of all the movement and because turkeys are they're very difficult to kill. Period. With a shotgun, you throw in a bow and it just it multiplies the difficulty factor by 100. So I set my blind up where I think is a good spot to be, and I have 3 decoys with me. I'll have 2 hens, and I have a mounted gobbler that's strutting, and he's a taxidermy gobbler. So he has a fan. I have a little stringer I can pull and make his fan come up and down. And I think it's real important for that factor to get them very, very close. I always set my gobbler up about 5 to 8 yards from my blind. It really doesn't matter which direction you're going to turn him, because sometimes the wind's going to take care of that for you anyway. And I'll set the hens around him, usually a little further from me. And a gobbler will typically come in and come straight to the decoy gobbler. And so you want to set it where, with a longbow, where you can move. If you like to shoot on the left side of the blind or the right side of the blind, you need to set that decoy up there. I typically will put mine on the right side of the blind, kind of out in front of me. And another important thing is I found the best thing to sit in is a swivel chair. You need a nice, quiet swivel chair, and you can shoot out of the chair instead of trying to get on your knees or do this or that. You just slowly turn in the chair and get ready for the shot. But I'll set my decoys up like that, and then when I get ready to start calling, when birds are gobbling and on the ground, I'll start calling to them. And usually it's not too long till they'll show up. And if he is interested and wants to come on in, then he'll come right on up to your gobbler decoy. And I prefer them facing me. If I have a shot, I prefer to shoot them right in the beard facing me. And I think seems like every bird I've ever shot that way, they just drop over backwards. And it also gives you something to shoot at. And so you shoot right where that old beard comes sticking out of its breast, and that's what you aim at. And straight on, and you shoot him there, and he's just going to fall over backwards. His feet might kick 2 or 3 times, and that's about it. The side shot's a little more difficult because they can be puffed up or they may be slicked down, and if they're slicked down, it's a little easier to find the spot. And you typically will go up the leg and about the middle of the body and shoot. And you want to shoot right at the top of the thigh. And that works real good. You want to avoid anywhere else because a lot of times it's a no-kill zone. So you just got to be real careful with that, and that's why I prefer the strutting in right in facing me shot. I've had more success with it.
Right, yeah, that's some great information there on the shot placement, because that's, like you said, when you got a gobbler in full strut, it can be very difficult to pinpoint exactly where you want to hit those vitals. But you've always got that beard, on the facing shot. I can definitely see where you'd always have that beard as your frame of reference for sure.
Right, and it gives you something to look at. And with traditional equipment, you don't have sights, and so it makes you pick the spot. And I tell you what, you just pick it where that beard comes growing out, and that's where you put the arrow.
Awesome. Now, is it also safe to say, Don, that if I followed what you said there correctly, that when you're positioning your gobbler decoy, you're essentially putting that decoy exactly where you want that gobbler to stand when you're shooting him, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So they usually will come in within a yard or two of your decoy. I've had them come in, bump it. I've had them knock it over. I've seen them do a lot of things. They'll typically ignore the hens. The hens are there just kind of directing. And you can lay a hen down in front of him without it being on a stick and make it look like a hot hen, like he's getting ready to mount her. And that'll excite them a little bit too. But honestly, it's that puffed up gobbler that they're coming into. And so you set him where you want to shoot, and that's where they should come.
Okay, that's a great tip. Thanks for sharing that. Now, I know you said that you've always hunted from a ground blind. Is there any particular camouflage or type of clothing that you like to wear inside the blind?
I do black out. I will carry black gloves, black shirt, and a black mask. And so turkeys will see you moving inside a blind, and so I will totally black out inside there.
Okay, very
so
nice.
It really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you wear. You can wear blue jeans in there if you want to. Just be sure and wear a black shirt, and black face mask, and black gloves.
Okay, very nice. Now, Don, also I wanted to have you cover a little bit about what calls, and what calls specifically that you use, and kind of how you go about doing your call sequences.
So I love a box call. It's just the best call in the world, and I'll typically will use a box to get them started, and then I use a diaphragm call when they get a little closer. And if I want to mix it up and sound like more of a flock, then I might grab two boxes and grab two different diaphragms. But honestly, it's usually I'll have one box there, and I'll have one diaphragm call in my mouth, and it's worked really well for me. And when you get them in a little close and they see your decoy, you can shut up because they're going they're going to come right on in running. And occasionally, if you get one to hang up, the little secret is to gobble at them. And I have seen gobbles, if you're on private land where it's safe, if you'll gobble at a gobbler that's kind of hung up, he'll march right on in.
Okay, yeah, I personally also like the gobble call a lot. I've had good luck with it the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would certainly agree there. Very nice. Now, I know you mentioned before about how once that gobbler sees your decoy, he's going to come in. Now, do you have any kind of like set rules of thumb? At what point you're going to stop calling to that gobbler if he starts to commit?
No, I don't. They will. So sometimes when they come in, they'll just run in. I mean, they'll just run in. They'll scare you to death. They come in so fast. And those are birds you don't even have to worry about calling to. But then you'll get those birds that'll hang up, or they've been hunted before, or they're just a little leery of your setup. I've hunted places where they're spooked of decoys, for example. And those type of birds you may have to, coax in with some soft yelps or clucks, or as you said, with some gobbles, because those, and there's really no set way to do it because you don't know how they're going to respond to different calls, and you just have to experiment. Each time you go out hunting, you're experimenting anyway, and sometimes things work, sometimes they don't work, and next time they may work. You just don't know. So you just have to play with a few things and see, what's going to work to get them all in. But, the ideal thing is to have one just run in and knock you down just about it. Those are fun birds.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine for sure. Now, Don, I also wanted to have you explain to the listeners, do you have any specific practice routines that you use, when it comes to traditional, hunting turkeys?
Actually, I do. I use a chair. I use my exact chair that I use in my blind, and it's taken me a long time to find a good chair. But I did find a really good chair that's good for hunting with a longbow, and it's a swivel chair with a tripod bottom, and I practice with that chair. I'll shoot my regular targets with it, but the thing that has helped me the most is I'll throw tennis balls in the backyard and I'll shoot them, and your target that you're shooting on a turkey is about the size of a tennis ball. So if you can hit a tennis ball 9 times out of 10 within your comfort range, then you're going to be able to hit a turkey unless you just get really excited, which is possible. But that's what I'll do. I'll pull the tennis balls out. I'll sit in my chair and I'll swivel around and I'll shoot the tennis balls for practice.
Okay, very nice. Yeah, I can see where that would certainly be, great practice for, aiming at that, small, like you said, smaller aiming point on a turkey.
Right. And you need to also do that occasionally out of your blind, because that's a big problem, is the working with a longbow or a recurve inside of a blind. You don't want to brush the sides of the blind or anything because you'll spook your birds. So you got to practice at canting your bow and shooting out the windows. And so I definitely stress shooting practicing out of the blind too. And shoot tennis balls, because that's about what you're going to be trying to hit.
Okay, very nice. And Don, I also wanted to, ask you if you were going to give the listeners one or two tips that you think would help them be more successful when it comes to, traditional bow hunting turkeys. What would those one or two tips be?
Try and set your decoys as close to your blind as possible, because you want a close shot. What I have found is, during all the excitement and when the gobblers are shaking the ground gobbling at you and they're standing 20 yards away, it can be difficult to hit them. So have them as close as you can, because it's hard to miss one at 6 stats, and it's a lot easier to miss one at 22 stats. So get them close, set your decoys close to you, and hurt those birds, call them in, and call soft when they get close, and pick a spot the size of a tennis ball, and you should do good.
Awesome, very nice. I appreciate the tips. And Don, earlier this morning, I actually put a post on Facebook and let some of the traditional archery groups know that I'd be interviewing you tonight for the show. And I had a question come in from one of the podcast listeners, and I wanted to ask you this question here on the show for William Hauer. And essentially what his question is, and I think you've already kind of covered it throughout the podcast because I know you hunt from a ground blind, but he was wondering, kind of what your thought process is on how to get drawn on a turkey if it's not strutting, so it doesn't visually pick you off. I guess are you specifically in your case, relying on that ground blind in your blackout camouflage to accomplish that for you?
Yes, and they will see you in the blind, especially if you've got your decoys close and you've got your turkey is in close. I've had them spot me inside the blind moving, so you have to be ready when they come up. And what I do is trick it when those birds are 30 or 40 yards out and they're coming in. I've already got my bow in position, and I've already got my hand on the string, and I've got my arrow ready. All I have to do is pull straight back. And that way there is no movement of my bow or anything. All that is moving is my shoulder and my black hand that's in the glove, and so they don't really see it. I've had them, last year I called some up, and I had them brushing up against my blind, and I had another guy in there hunting with me, and that makes it even harder when you've got two and you're going, okay, I can shoot, can you shoot? Oh, I can shoot, can you shoot? And we're all trying to see who can shoot, and you've got turkeys brushing up against your blind. When they're close like that, it makes it really, really hard to draw, or really hard to get out of a port or whatever to shoot. So it's a little easier with one person in the blind. It's also easier if you're ready to shoot, you're in the proper window or whatever, and you're waiting on him before he gets there.
Okay, yeah, I can see where that would make a lot of sense. So you're essentially, as that turkey is coming in and you really think the shot's about to happen, you're getting your bow arm and your bow, you're getting ready to make that shot, correct?
Right. Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I can see where that would certainly be a big factor in helping you get through that draw process. Very nice. Well, Don, I appreciate you taking the time to answer those questions here on the show, and I'm hoping that the listeners will be able to gather a thing or two and help them out this season. I know I've picked up a thing or two here from talking to you. Now, for anybody who wants to follow along with you, maybe see how you're doing in the woods, is there any place that they can do that, or?
I have a Facebook page, and that's all. But they'd be glad to friend me and follow along. I'll be headed to Nebraska and South Dakota in next month, and so hopefully I can get my Marion, and I'll probably try for the Florida bird, the Osceola, either in the fall or next spring.
Okay, very nice. Well, I certainly wish you the best of luck on that, Don.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on. It was really a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I'm sure everybody listening is gonna, like I said, found this show to be enjoyable, and I'm sure everybody's gonna be able to take a thing or two to help them be more successful in the future as well.
I hope so.
Okay, Don. Well, have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Yes, you too. Thanks, sir.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, guys. Well, there you have it. A look back at my recent interview with Don Barnett. I hope everybody enjoyed that interview. I certainly had a great time talking to Don, and he really shared some great tips and some great tactics there for us that I know I'm going to be trying in my own turkey hunting throughout this year and the seasons to come. And I hope that everybody out there listening got a thing or two from Don's interview that they can employ in their own turkey hunting and help them be more successful. And I only got one more reminder for everybody. If you enjoy what we're doing here at the podcast, I would really appreciate it if you could jump on over to iTunes, leave us a quick review on the podcast. It's a great way for us to not only get the podcast to more people so that we can try to help more people out, but it's also a great way for me to continue to get excellent guests like Don Barnett here on the show. And once again, I want to thank everybody who took the time to tune into this week's show. I'm going to see you next week right here on an all-new episode of the TradCast.